Hey everybody, this is Winn here, and we're on an edition, Olympic Minds, Leadership Without Limits. So this is for those leaders who want to really move beyond success into significance and to move from mediocrity to mastery. This is not for small-minded people. This is for growth mindset people who want to make a difference in the world. So a little bit about my background. I'm a two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, and a leadership expert. And what I can promise you is this. We're not going to talk about fluff, guaranteed. What we're going to discuss is not theory, not fluff. We're going to talk about things that are grit tested, heart proven, and results driven. So I want to introduce you today to a good friend of mine, Jeff Higgy. And we first were introduced through an interview that I did with Jeff for one of my books that I wrote. And he just has been one of those guys that hangs around because he's a success coach, because he's really, truly committed. He's committed to helping people. He has an open heart. And so I'm going to let Jeff tell you a little bit about himself. He's an entrepreneur, a success coach. He's an author. He's a podcaster. There's so many things that Jeff does. You're going to love him just like I do. So Jeff, why don't you give us a little bit more about you?
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, you interviewed me for that book and you haven't been able to get rid of me since. So it's been a great relationship. Appreciate you. A little bit about myself. As you said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a success coach. I work with athletes. I work with entrepreneurs as a coach. I'm an author and done a lot of things. And, a lot of my different experiences come from all the different worlds that tie together for me. I've coached basketball for 20 years. I was a professional rodeo cowboy. And, all of these different things tie together, and it's really culminated into leadership in all different areas. And so I'm excited to talk about this, Sherry.
Cool. So the first question I have for you is, how does being a rodeo clown tie into leadership and success? Right? I mean, you have to be quick enough and you got to be fast enough. You got to be smart enough to get out of the way. But tell me, what did you learn from that experience that really drove you into learning more about success?
Well, in the rodeo, my event was steer wrestling. And,
oh my goodness.
And so that's an event for those of you that don't know what steer wrestling is. You're on a horse. You've got someone on the other side that's on a horse that their job is just to keep the steer running straight. You nod your head, you go out, you jump onto the head of this steer running full speed, and you wrestle him to the ground is basically what you do. And I think, when we talk about what did I learn from that applies to leadership is, that's all happening in the matter of 4 seconds. You're sitting in the corner, you nod your head, they open the gates, and 4 seconds later, you're done. And so you've got to be able to have your systems, your strategies, things in place where you can operate automatically, where you can have things in place that you're going to be able to implement, because just like muscle memory, you do things because you know how to do it. And that's something that I've really learned a lot in my coaching, in my entrepreneurship. You've got to be able to do those things. You know what? Sometimes you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to win, but you're going to learn from it. You're going to move on, go to the next rodeo and do better.
Like that. We're gonna get to the next rodeo, people. We're not gonna stay down. We're gonna get to the next rodeo. Right. So this is about when you're talking about being that rodeo person, that rodeo clown, and you're helping, right? What I understand is, like, if you're the rodeo clown, that's what you said you were, is that correct?
No, I was a steer wrestler. I wasn't a clown.
You were the steer wrestler, my bad, steer wrestler. You only have seconds, right? To get to that point, grab the steer, jump off your horse and try to wrestle that steer down. And when you sometimes you miss.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be dangerous if you miss the wrong way. I can imagine that could be dangerous. But the thing about that is the repetition over time to be how good you are on that, right? You have to have that repetition over time, and not just the physical aspect of doing that. It's not the physical aspect. It is the mental aspect that you have to train there. So tell me a little bit about, because this is going to lead into about your mind, your training for that, because it really leads into how do you train people to be successful? Yes, absolutely.
And you know what, that I can remember when I started to realize the importance of the mental game, because when I rodeoed, I did a lot of my rodeoing with my older brother, and we traveled together and we practiced together, and I learned a lot from him. And I remember when he gave me an article, it was out of the Canadian Pro Rodeo Sports News, and it was all about visualization. And I started carrying that article with me everywhere because I'd read it over and over, because it's when I first started to realize the mental side of the game. That has helped me in business. That has helped me in the Confident Athlete program that we run. Everyone I coach, whether it's an athlete or an entrepreneur, the mental game is such a powerful thing. You know, for me, one of the big things for me personally and the clients I work with are my routines, the things I do on a daily basis. Visualization is something I learned from that article he gave me. It's something I do every single day now. It's part of my night routine that I do every single day. And so, you know, for example, just from that simple thing, the visualization, I created a routine with Rodeo. It's when I was ready to go, I went through my visualization. And it wasn't that, you know, I couldn't visualize and it'd be exactly what I visualized, but there was key things. Like, for this isn't going to mean anything to anyone that doesn't know rodeo, but for me, it was how I caught the horn and the inside horn and placed the steer's head right, getting off the horse. Right. And so I would visualize those important things so that when it's happened in a split second, those things I focused on and I'm going to be able to implement.
Right. So it's interesting, you know, you were talking about visualization, because when I was an athlete, I was a basketball player, and on the bus ride to an away game, I would start visualizing about 30 minutes before the game, you know, before we got there, visualizing the game. And what I found, and maybe this happened to you, Javis, what I found is all of a sudden I would have this perfect and then I'd see myself missing, or I'd see myself making a mistake. I'm like, no! And so I would literally just rewind. I'd see myself going backwards, right? Like, and then I'd do it again until I saw it in my mind the way that I wanted it to happen. And did you ever experience that, where your brain came in with the wrong thing and then you had to correct it?
Well, you know what I love about that, and I actually just had a conversation about this morning. That's something, you know, Tammy, that I work with the Confident Athlete program. That's something that I really learned from her, because to me, visualization was always, you know, the power of positive thinking and stuff. So everything was perfect. And I didn't visualize when things went wrong. And so when they did go wrong, you know, I hadn't gone through that visualization. And that's what I work a lot with my athletes now is, you know, don't focus on the negative, but you've got to be prepared for it so that you're going to be able to respond to it rather than react. And so I think that's important in business. I think it's important in sports, all of those things. And I love how you visualize that happened and you just hit reverse and rewound and start again. I love that.
Yeah, because I didn't want to let that linger. Like, you have like 15 seconds or so to change a thought before it gets rewired in your neural network, right? And so a lot of people, what they do is they just follow the negative. They let it play too long. I'm like, you can't let it play too long. You gotta get that out of your head. You gotta reverse it. You gotta do something different with it. And what I find with a lot of people that I work with, Jeff, like you work with, we find people who they have a thought. It's a negative thought. They follow the thought. They create a story about the thought. They're 5 minutes into a negative story before they even realize they're there. Well, right. Now your brain has really fired up and wired up those neural networks. And so to change it, it's going to require a lot of extra effort going forward, right? You have to really work at it hard now. Whereas if you caught it early, before it became so, programmed into your brain, you have a better chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the things that are outside of your control, the negativity, we both played basketball. We know what it's like when a ref makes a wrong call.
No, I don't know. I have never.
Well, they only do it against us, right? But how you respond to that versus how you react to it are two different things. Yep. And so you've got to be able to prepare yourself for that.
So you were a coach. You said you coached basketball for a while. So tell me, how would you train your players for that particular moment? So something happens, it's a bad call, and it happens because, look, officials are human. Like, we don't go to game and never make a mistake. But we expect officials to go to game and never make a mistake, right? We can miss a shot, we can make a turnover, and that's part of the game. But if an official makes a mistake, that's not part of the game. So tell me, how did you train them because you said, look, we got to get able to respond rather than react. What did you say to your athletes, or how did you train them so that was what they did?
Well, I think that's exactly what you have to do. You've got to train them. Rather than letting it happen in the moment, you've got to do it ahead of time. Even if it's just conversations, even if it's I did a lot of times. I would sit down with my team and we would go through visualization. I had one team that before every game, we would meet early and then they would each go in their separate spot and do their visualization. And so I would have that so that, because during the game it's emotional. And if you're going to respond with emotion, it's not going to be good. And so we would have those conversations so that when it happened, they recognized the stimulus and didn't just react to it immediately. And some players, it's just like, even whether it's a referee or missing a key shot or something, they needed something to physically kind of trigger themselves. I had one player, she would touch her shoulder. I had another player, actually I had my daughter, that we had written something on her shoes so that if she put her head down, she would see it and it would trigger her, move on.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So I think you need it in the WNBA, because as far as I know, there's never been a WNBA player who's never committed the foul that was called on her, right? They have this reaction that goes, it's not me, I don't know what, and they replay it is like, okay, there's occasionally a time that they don't foul, but every single time they're like, I didn't, like, oh, they start yelling at the foul. I'm like, what is wrong with you guys? Like, you're move on. Like this, it's already happened. It's an event. If you're not going to challenge it, move on. But that's one of the things that I see is people tend to learn to react. So let's shift that from rodeo to your coaching. How do you do that now in what you do? So you're a success coach, and let's say you're training somebody that's not in athletics. So what would you do to help them? Is it still visualization? Is it still some trigger? You still do the same thing?
I still use visualization. I mean, today I use it in my business every single day. And it's from everything from where you're trying to go with the business to how you're interacting with your team or customers or whatever it might be. I think that's important. I think it's a huge thing. So the way I look at it is, we're going to become someone regardless, right? We're going to become our future self. And it's how we are intentionally in our actions to become that individual that really matter, that really help us determine who we're going to become. And that's ourselves in our personal lives, in our business lives, everything we're doing. And it's the same with our team, our employees. And so if you can be intentional on your actions, it's going to have a huge impact on who you become. And if you're not spending some time visualizing who is that future self that you want to be, how are you going to be able to become that person?
Yeah, there's, we just think it's magic. Like, I'll just arrive. Yeah. I don't think it's magic. It's the people who, I've never heard an Olympian get up on the gold medal stand and go, I never dreamed I'd be here. Like, nobody ever says that. They'll say, I've spent hours dreaming about this moment. I've spent hours thinking about this moment. They don't ever say like, oh, I just never thought I'd be here. No, I mean, it's right. The intention, right? You have a goal, a direction, and then you're doing things every day to get you to that place that you want to go. That's the difference. And I think people who are just kind of living on a hope or a prayer or a wish are going to be disappointed. It's never going to happen the way they want it to happen.
Well, you're still going to become someone. It's just not that someone that you want it to be.
Things I've been really, I guess, preaching, you can say preaching, maybe it's teaching. One of the things I've been teaching is that there are no neutral thoughts. Like, there's no neutral thought. Every thought that we have has, a definite vibration attached to it. And it's either something that goes towards something positive or something that's more negative. It's not neutral. So if we were to look at a flower, we just don't go, that's a flower. We will say, that's a beautiful flower, or that's an incredible flower. Oh my gosh, it smells so pretty. Or like we've got something to it. It's not just a flower, a tree. There is an emotional attachment to that, either positive or negative. So when we don't have an intention with our thoughts, so when we're not really focused on those thoughts, most of the time they go towards something negative. And then if we let them go, why should we be surprised how things turn out? We shouldn't be surprised.
That's right.
Because we're creating that very thing, right? Because every thought has the power of intention behind it. So what you're doing with visualization is you're applying that intention to who you really want to be. And I'm assuming, and so maybe I should ask the question because I'm just assuming, that you are thinking that, visualizing as if it were today. So it's not like, oh, this is me in 5 years from now, but you really feel that moment as if it were real. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the other part I do is I don't visualize it like I'm watching a story. I don't visualize it like I'm watching a movie. I put myself in that position that I'm seeing it first person, and yeah, it's today. I've achieved those things.
Right. So it's not a surprise when it happens because you're like, oh yeah, yeah. It's almost like old news. It's old news.
Been there, done that.
I've already done this for 1,000 times. We can move on. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. I think the challenge, Jeff, that most people have, in my experience is, let's say that they're like, but it's real. Like what's happening is right now is real. Like I'm really feel. For example, I've had health issues for a long time, and so forever I've listened to people, guides and mentors and coaches tell me you can't focus on what is. Like you can't sit there and go what is. You have to believe and feel as if you've already healed yourself. And I would be like, but it's true. It's like, I can feel that. What are you telling me? It's not real. And so I get stuck in that loop of, but it's real. This is what's really going on. And you want me to pretend like it's not there? And so how do you, when you're talking to people and have that kind of response, like, but it's real. This is really where I am. I don't have the money, or I'm not currently in the place I want to be as an athlete, or whatever it is you're doing. How do you get them over that hump of, but it's real?
Because that is tough, because it is real. It is. The ref did make a bad call. You don't have the money, whatever it is. And so that part is tough. And, I actually heard a story today that I want to share. It's so good.
Please.
So there is a scientist that was doing some studies. He wanted to see basically if you put some rats in water, how long would they survive? And, in his first study, he found that within 4 minutes to 11 minutes, they would give up and they would drown. And so he ran another study. And what he did was, when they started to get to that point where they were giving up, where they were ready to drown, he would pull them out and then he would put them back in. And what he found there was that when he did that, those rats that were going to give up and drown after 4 minutes, some of them swam for another 60 hours. And why? Because There was hope. They had hope. And I really think that's such a powerful thing. I've got a good friend, Steph, that always says hope is so much greater than fear. And I think that's where the mindset comes in, and the things that we're focusing on and the visualization is because we've got to hope and have that vision of where we want to be, who that future self is that we want to become. And that vision gives us that hope. Because we're not there right now. But if all we're focused on is, this is the problem, I'm drowning, no one's going to save me, I'm going to drown.
Yeah.
But when I'm focused on, there is hope. There is, and being intentional on your focus, but also in your actions. You can't just say, hope's going to save me,
right.
But you've got to take the actions as well. But you've got to have that hope that future self that you see is doable.
I love that. I love the story. So it kind of reminds me of a recent story I had, and I'm going to share this story, Jeff, because I think it's really relevant to what we're talking about. So a few weeks ago, a friend of mine and I were going to go kayaking, and we got there. Of course, we wore life vests because it's in a river, and our dogs were going, and they had life vests on. We got there, and I looked down the river. I'm like, ooh, it's kind of fast. And I'm not like, I just want to leisurely, with a little bit of challenge, kind of kayak. I'm not any kind of kayak expert, right? So none of that. So, but I didn't say anything. We decided to get in, and she's gone before I even turned the corner. So there's like a little stream coming into the main. When I get there and I turn, she's already flipped, and she's going down on top of her kayak, and her dog is like trying to get to the shore. So I'm like, well, I got to rescue the dog. Not that she wasn't important, but she was already gone. I wasn't going to catch her. She had her life vest on. So I get the dog, catch up to her, and this is Montana, so the water here is cold. I mean, you can get hypothermia, if you don't get it. So she was frozen, she got out, and she's like, I gotta warm up. So we stood in the sun for a while, and she's like, okay, I can feel my toes again, we're okay. We got back in the kayaks, and maybe 20 minutes later down the river, she had flipped again. So the same thing happened. She's going down the river, the dog is over, trying to get to the edge. I go save the dog, I get out, and so then I got two dogs. And I don't know where she's at. Like, she had turned a corner. I don't know how far down she is. I don't know anything about that. I was like, okay, I have 2 dogs and the river's really fast here and it's all going into the corner where I got out. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna make this work. But I thought, well, I can make it work. So I get both dogs in and I start to go, and the dogs wanted to get up at the tip of the kayak. And I was like, no, well, because of the weight, they kind of tipped the kayak down and I caught water. Now I'm in trouble. And so I'm having a hard time steering, and we ended up into the side where a log is coming out. And so now the kayak is tipped and water's coming in fast. And so I grab the dogs and I throw them out of the kayak. Well, they don't quite get to the land. And so they're halfway on this, their little legs are paddling in the water and they're half up and half. So I lean over again. I'm still in the kayak. I lean over again and I grab both of them and push them up. But when I do that, the kayak tips more and my leg is now caught. So it gets out of the kayak. My leg is caught between the log and the kayak. Now imagine that how much water is pouring into that kayak. So the pressure that's going against my leg and the log. So, and I don't know if help is coming because I don't know where she's at. And then when we put in, there was only like one other raft there and they were fishing. So I didn't know if they were coming or not. So of course I look, can't see either direction, anybody. And I go, okay, now here's where the mindset work comes in. First thing I thought was be calm. Second thing I thought was think. Third thing I thought was you've got this. Fourth thing I thought was there is a solution to every problem. So I try to move the log will not move. I try to move the kayak will not move. So this is going on for maybe 6-7 minutes and I never panicked. I just was like, I kept repeating, you've got this, think, you can think your way out of this. And I was able to finally get my opposite leg up high enough on the kayak, other side, and push it just enough that this leg popped out. Now I want you to think about that. Like the pressure that was on my leg, my lower leg started going numb. Like this is not a good scenario. This is not a place that you want to be, right? Without knowing if I was going to be rescued or how long it was going to take. But it was the training of the mind, because I will guarantee you that had that been maybe 10 years earlier, I wouldn't have had that response. That would have not have been a response. I would have panicked. I would have called myself stupid. Like, you knew better. I can't believe you did that. All those things would have occurred. And yet the training of the mind kept me in a position that I was able to rescue myself, right? And that's what we're talking about today. This is the very thing that we're talking about in terms of like having an Olympic level mind. It's a trained mind. You're training your mind daily. I'm training my mind daily to help us get to these levels where we can overcome whatever situation is in front of us, where I think that most people don't spend the time in training. So tell me, beyond visualization, what else do you do to help you train your mind?
I really focus on bookending my days. You know, you can control how you start your day. You can control how you end your day. You can't always control how everything in between goes. Mm-hmm. And so I've established some habits and routines that I do every single day. And they don't have to be things that take hours to do, but I have my morning routine that I go through, and I actually have been doing it. I have a program called the 4-Week Winn Challenge that I've had my son doing it with my 14-year-old son. And so we go through our morning routine, we go to the gym, but a big part of what we do is go through my mindset questions every morning. And cool. Those are just some questions that I ask myself every morning that kind of primes my mind for the day. And I mean, the first one is, what are you grateful for today? And love it. Starting the day with gratitude is so powerful. And then, you know, it's not a long list of questions, but another one that I think is probably the most powerful one is, what are you going to do today that's going to make you step out of your comfort zone? Because every time we step out of our comfort zone, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but the next time we're faced with that situation, we've done it. We're more comfortable doing it. So if you're looking for something every single day to step out of your comfort zone, pretty soon that's not stepping out of your comfort zone. You're comfortable with it. It's just, I do that. And so
that's awesome. I love it. And so you got that little journal up there. Can you tell people how you could get that? Because I'm certain that people are listening are going like, I need, like, not just like that's cool, but I need this.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. You can search up Jeff Hagee Mindset Journal on Amazon, or if you just want the mindset questions, you can go, you know what I'm going to give today is if you go to jeffhagee.com/habits, you're going to be able to get my mindset questions for free and free future self masterclass that I've done there. You do need to make sure to put www. For some reason, it'll give you an error if you don't, but jeffhagee.com/habits, and you'll be able to get that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're offering that to people. So it's really the mind training. I think, that people don't understand the power of our minds. They just don't get it. And so they go through life and things happen to them and then they're mad about it. And they don't try to change anything. They don't try to change anything. And so it's the habits, just like if you were an athlete. Great athletes have habits they do every single day. Well, if you want to be a great leader, or you want to be a great parent, or you want to have success wherever you go, it's about that mind training. So it's about creating the habits that you have. So one of the things you said earlier, you said, you have to have this hope. And then you talked about gratitude. How do those two interact? Because to me, gratitude leads to hope. And without gratitude, it's hard to live with hope. So how do you connect those dots for your clients?
The funny thing is, just yesterday, when what am I grateful for today? I wrote down hope. Because I think you need both. Hope is for something in the future. Gratitude is something that you have now. And I think you do definitely need to have both and recognize both. And, this whole conversation has been, what are the things that we focus on? What are the things that we give our attention to? And when you're giving your attention to the things you're grateful for, the things you're hoping for, that changes your whole mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Like, look, I grew up in a very pessimistic family. So we were kings or queens of pessimism. And I did not know that because I said, I'm a realist, And when I was training for the Olympics, I had a roommate, and she'd get up in the morning, she'd go, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful outside. And I would run over to the window thinking it was going to be like sunny and beautiful, and it'd be like a blizzard. I'm like, are you out of your freaking mind? Like, what do you mean it's beautiful? I'm like, this is a blizzard, it's a blizzard. And then, a few days later, she'd go to the window again, she's like, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And I'd go out thinking, oh my gosh, here we finally, it's going to be sunny. And it would be hailing. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're absolutely crazy. And I was like, every day you look at the window and it doesn't matter what's outside, you're always saying it's beautiful. She goes, yeah, because that's the kind of day I want to have. I was like, because I didn't know that you could look at different situations and find the good in them. I had no idea that was a thing. I thought I was a realist. I go, well, it's snowing. That means it's really cold outside. That means it's going to be really crabby when we go to run. I'm going to be frozen to death. Like, I'll never be able to make the run. My toes are probably going to freeze. I mean, that's how my mind worked. And here's this person going, oh, it's so beautiful. And I think that, that was the moment I learned about, what do you mean? Like, you're grateful for whatever shows up? Like, that's crazy. What is wrong with you, child? Like, I was just like telling her something was wrong with her. We needed to fix her brain. Well, it was my brain that needed to be fixed. It wasn't her brain that needed to be fixed. That's insane. So tell me a little bit more about, you talk about your success coaching, and is there do you take them through like A to Z, or do you meet them where you're at, or how do you go about coaching people to be more successful?
Everyone's a little bit different, but everyone's always the same too. I mean, that's the biggest thing I noticed between entrepreneurs and athletes. I can teach the exact same thing, but one's towards business, one's towards sport. And, in the Confident Athlete program, we do have a success path that we take them through A, B, C, D. But for the most part, I customize things because I really want to look at where they are. But in the end, we do go through pretty much the same thing. And especially on the mindset side, because you've got to go through, the self-talk, the body language, all of those things, and realize where you're at and who that future self is that you want to become. Because, between who you are now and who you want to become, until you've gone through different experiences, you're just not in a position to do those things. And so you've got to create that path, and you've got to be intentional about it. And so, and that's one of the things I love. I love working with entrepreneurs just because I love business, but I also love working, I've got another part where I help people start businesses or as a side hustle or as a new thing. And I love doing that because it is such a mindset thing that, someone is so stuck into their 9 to 5. This is how life is. I'm going to retire with a golden watch, yada, yada, yada. No, I'm never going to be able to retire and live the life I've dreamt of. But isn't that how life works? No, there's things you can do, and let's create your path and do those different things. And so it's fun. I really enjoy doing that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the passion, right? People that are good, I think, also have the passion.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be average, that means that you are not living in your passion, right? Because if you're living in your passion, it's not like work. It's fun. Like, this is fun. Not to say it's not challenging some days or whatever, but there's a difference between that. Like, I'm living in my passion. I go to work and it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. It feels like challenge. It feels like, something learning. It feels like so many different things. And when I find people are stuck, it's because they're not living in their passion. Like, they're not passionate about their job. So one of the things that I find often with people, Jeff, is with my clients, I'm sure you found this yours, is they talk about, they're like, I don't have any confidence. I have all this self-doubt. I have this syndrome thing, this imposter syndrome thing. Like, they caught it somewhere. Like, it was like a disease that they caught. And now they're like, I have this syndrome and I don't know how to get rid of it because I caught it from somewhere. So I'm sure you've heard the same thing from people. Like, I have the imposter syndrome. I have all this self-doubt. How do you get to that person so to help them really relieve that feeling they're not good enough?
Yeah, that is tough. And I mean, I've been in that position where I've felt the same way. And I think, I know one of the things I like to do with people is work them through what I call the momentum cycle. And that is, having your plan. But, when you do something, when you achieve, just like I said with the mindset questions, when you step out of your comfort zone, it becomes more comfortable. Well, those small wins create momentum. And so, when we're intentional, the biggest thing is you've got to take action. And when you can take action and create some results, it creates some confidence, which creates so you can take more action, bigger results, more confidence. And it's a cycle. And so if you can take massive action, you're going to end up getting some bigger results, create more confidence, and just keep getting better and better. And then something slaps you. I ran a business. I had a manufacturing company that I started from scratch, ran it for 16 years. And during COVID, I had to shut it down.
Oh.
And that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I lost everything. And then I still had to, I was the owner. And so I was still liable for more. And it grounded me. Yeah. And, for a while I sat there and pouted. And it was actually in this office, my wife was sitting in that chair. And we were talking about things, and she said, you know what, whatever happens, me and you, we're good.
Wow.
And that was a turning point.
Goosebumps. Okay.
It really was a turning point for me. I thought, you know what, the things that matter the most are all right. And it gave me the opportunity to say, okay, I got to stand up, get through the embarrassment, get through the struggles, whatever it is, but I've got to take action again. And I've got to create that plan and start working that plan and building that confidence back up. But I think that's a big part of what you've got to do is you've got to take action.
So one of the things that I've found is there's a lot of people that have limiting beliefs, right? And those limiting beliefs really are the self-sabotaging. And somebody said, well, it's not really self-sabotaging as much as it's self-protecting. So we think, through our mindset, like we have these belief systems that get us stuck somewhere. And because they're in place, then we tend to self-sabotage or self-protect, whatever you want to call it, because it somehow it thinks we're going to keep ourselves safe, right? So that's why I say self-protection, but it ends up self-sabotaging us, right? If we have a belief, for example, if I had a belief that said, look, because I'm a woman, then I won't ever be able to reach the top of the speaking industry because, you have to be a white man to do it, right? So all of a sudden, that's a limiting belief. It's about, I'm a woman, and so it's going to be harder, and people aren't going to listen to me, blah, blah, blah. So if I have that belief, there's no way that I'm ever going to get there. So when you meet people, I'm sure you have clients with limiting beliefs because we all have them. What is the thing that you can do to help them through that?
one of the things that I think is powerful are stories, just like this, listen to people share their stories. In our book that I wrote with Tammy, it's Challenge Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. The whole purpose of that book is to show people when you're faced with adversity, it doesn't have to be the end. You can rise above it, because all these athletes and people we look up to, we think, oh, they're perfect, nothing's ever gone wrong. Well, that's what the book is about, the adversity they've been through before they got to where they are. And so our hope with that book is to be able to have people read those stories and say, look what they went through, and now look where they are. I can do that too. And so I love learning through stories. I think we can all do that, because even myself, when I had to shut down that company, it was the worst time of my life. It was devastating. It was embarrassing. It was terrible. And now I look back and I'm like, you know what? I didn't die. I thought I was going to die.
This too shall pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go through it again, but I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do have this idea that we shouldn't be faced with challenges. Like, it's the most insane idea ever. Like, we think that we're born and everything should just sail perfectly off in the sunset. And that is not the way that life goes. We're all challenged. We all have a series of either, these life disruptions that happen that are things that are going to impact us for up to 3 months. And we have these other series of things like you just mentioned, which is a life quake, which is a life disruption on steroid. And we all have them. Nobody is exempt from the human experience. We're going to be betrayed, abandoned. We're going to be fired. Our most loved people sometimes walk out of our lives. We find our problems with gambling or like all of us. Nobody's exempt from that. And I think what sometimes we miss when we're growing up is that nobody sits down and goes, look, this is the pathway. It's the pathway of being human. It's not about the challenge. It's about what tools you have to move forward from the challenge. Because those are people that are ultimately successful, right? They're not living in the challenge. They're not living in the problem. They're able to move on to the solution. So if there's one thing that you want to share with the audience today that without a doubt, that would really help them moving forward, what would you tell them?
You're going to become the person that you think about. You're going to become the person who you visualize, whether that's successful or failure. You're going to become that person. And so if you are intentional about that future self, who you're going to become, you're still going to face adversity. You're going to get knocked down. But if you keep going, if you keep focused on where you're trying to get, you're going to get there.
Absolutely. One of the things that people used to tell me is, and they still do, they'll say, well, I would have been an Olympian. And my response is, if you would have been an Olympian, you would have been an Olympian. Like, there's nothing that would have stopped you, because they want to tell me all the things that got in their path. And I'm like, do you think that I just sailed right there? Do you think that's where it didn't happen that way? I mean, there were so many obstacles. And I'm not talking about just how many miles you had to run and how many push-ups you had to do and blah, 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 how many practice hours. I'm talking about the other things that got in the way, right? So yeah. What people fail to understand is, look, this is the pathway for everybody. Whoever has achieved like this magnificent success, they didn't get there just through this easy pathway. It wasn't lit up by this path of gold. And not everything was easy for them. They had to learn to get through all the challenges. They had to learn that. And so if people understand that, if they really understand like your mindset, your ideas that you've given them today about visualization, about the habits, intentional habits in the morning, right? Those things that if they will do those, they're going to see a different life ahead of them. But if you don't do anything different, it's guaranteed it's going to be the same thing for you.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So tell people where they can find you. Tell them, I know you mentioned a couple of your books before. I know that you mentioned your website before, but tell them a little bit more, like in what ways can you support them and help them, whether they're an athlete or if they're an entrepreneur, or just let them know, like, how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you? And really, and I know that from talking to you for several times, I can guarantee you folks, look, if you're going to go work with Jeff, I guarantee you're going to find success. If you do what he tells you to do, if you practice. Caveat, if you practice.
Well, thank you. At jeffhagee.com, you'll find everything. On social media, it's Jeff Hagee Coaching. Like I said earlier, you can go to jeffhagee.com/habits and get those free resources that I'd love to share. And you know what? One of the things that I love is our 4-week Winn challenge that I mentioned earlier. And you can find that at jeffhagee.com/win.
I like it. I like the name Winn, of course. I'm a big fan of the name.
Win with one N.
I love Winn. So everybody, hey, I appreciate people who are tuning in, and please, 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 if you found this to be powerful, if you found an insight, if you found something that's going to help you move forward, please share this with other people, because this is how people's lives are changed. When you are willing to share something that you heard that makes a difference in your life, and if you share that with other people, I guarantee you that you are one of the people who is the light of the world.